Alright guys, we are finally back on the channel. If you're new here, my name's Zach. I've been competing in natural bodybuilding since 2022, and over that time I've done 5 shows, earned my pro cards in the USBF and OCB, and I spent over a year's time combined in competition prep. During that time I learned a lot about the ins and outs of competition prep, learned a lot about the process, and had to learn some things the hard way too. And in this video I want to share 10 of my biggest takeaways that I've learned over the years of competing that I think somebody that's new into the sport, that's looking to compete for the first time, or maybe that's competed before and wants to maybe right the wrongs a little bit going into their next prep would benefit from. Starting with the first takeaway, and probably one of the biggest ones, is to be prepped for your prep. You want to have at least 90% of your routine already ingrained before prep starts. This goes from the types of foods you're going to be eating, your meal timing, training format, sleep schedule. This is extremely important for keeping mental and psychological stress to a minimum once prep starts. This is also one of the biggest reasons, in my opinion, that you see a lot of one and done competitors, because they go from following a routine that's not conducive to prep at all to then following the most strict and rigid prep program, and it's two polar opposite ends of the spectrum, and they leave that prep feeling like bodybuilding is too restrictive and rigid, when really they just weren't prepared for prep in the first place. If you set yourself up properly, then the only real moves left to make once prep actually starts is to bring down food and bring up your activity a little bit. That's all you're really doing. And when you put it that way, prep doesn't seem like this big, scary, extravagant thing that you have to switch around your whole lifestyle for. This includes mental preparation too. You need to tell yourself beforehand and accept beforehand that along the way there are going to be times when you want to quit, there are going to be things that you don't want to do, you're going to have to deal with hunger, lethargy, you're going to be cold, you're going to deal with mood swings, bad nights of sleep. Expect that all these things are going to happen, and you need to accept it beforehand. Remember that you chose to do this and that prep is a privilege, so enjoy the process as much as you possibly can. And that leads us into takeaway number 2, and that is to be invested in the process and not the outcome. You can't throw yourself into a bodybuilding prep because you just care about the end result on stage. You have to be internally motivated to push yourself to new levels, and that stage is just a means to achieve that. Because if you're just doing it for all the attention and external motivation, you're probably not even going to make it to the stage in the first place, because you won't push yourself to those levels that you need to in order to make it there. And at the end of it all, yeah, show day is awesome, but when you look back on it, the journey is going to be the thing that you remember the most. Takeaway number 3 is to be aware of the financial commitment beforehand. You're going to be spending a lot of money on not just your food, but your federation memberships, your show fees, your travel, your tanning, and if you compete on the female side of things, your hair and makeup, your posing suits. This is about natural bodybuilding, but if you're looking to go the enhanced route, you're going to be spending a lot of money on drugs and special supplements. There's a lot of extra fees that go into it, so make sure you're planning these things beforehand. That way you don't find out halfway through, realize you can't do it, pull out a prep, and then you just wasted a ton of time and money already up to that point. Alright, little change in scenery. Welcome to my kitchen. Apparently it's too hot outside for the camera to roll properly, so we're going to keep it going in here. But anyway, speaking of time, that brings us to point number 4, which is to give yourself time, and much more than you think you need. Most newer competitors severely underestimate how long it's actually going to take them to get in shape. They start prep at 12, 16 weeks out, and by the time they get to 6 weeks out, they finally realize, oh shit, I still have 20 more pounds to lose. And they're spending the last 6 weeks of prep just racing to the finish line, and they don't even get to really enjoy show day because they're so overstressed leading into it from all the work they had to cram into such a short period. If you think it's going to take you 12 weeks to get in shape, awesome, give yourself 20. And speaking from my own experience, I've done the 12-week prep, and I've also done the 25-week prep, the 30-week prep. And although 25 to 30 weeks, it sounds so much longer, it sounds like so much more work, trust me when I say it is a much easier time. If you're like most competitors, you're not getting paid to full-time bodybuild or be a full-time fitness influencer. You have actual shit going on in your day. You have jobs, you have kids, you have plenty of other responsibilities that you have to still manage in your life during prep. Prep isn't an excuse to throw all those things out the window. That being said, you're not going to have as much time in one given day to put towards contest prep, so you're going to need more days to get the end result that you're looking for. And it is so much less stressful to be ready ahead of time and have a couple weeks to actually coast into the show, to have your last couple weeks actually be some of your easiest weeks of prep, going into peak week, relaxed, and bringing your your best look on stage because you're not racing to the finish line. And if you plan ahead and give yourself enough time, that brings us to the next takeaway, which is to take prep breaks. You don't want to be tunnel visioned and white knuckling your entire way through prep, no breaks, no days off. You're gonna crash and burn at some point. You need to understand of how big of a stress bodybuilding prep actually is to the body. You're pushing your body to single-digit levels of body fat while also asking it to maintain as much muscle as possible. These are two opposing, convoluting adaptations, and you're asking your body to do both for months on end. That being said, we need to give our body time to relax and actually make the adaptations of fat loss and muscle retention that we're looking for. Having periods of higher food, less training volume, de-stressing overall, making time for other activities in your life. And one of the best ways to go about doing this to help maintain a normal-ish lifestyle, I know, ish, is to plan these around special occasions in your life. Holidays, birthdays, vacations. That way you can mesh your prep into your normal life and not have them butt heads so much all the time. And don't get it twisted. I'm not saying bodybuilding prep isn't supposed to be hard or a grind, but it's not all grind, grind, grind. Think of this concept as one step back for many more steps forward. Sometimes the hard thing to do is to pull back. And next up is my sixth takeaway: chase fat loss, not weight loss. Yes, if we're losing body fat, we will need to see the scale weight go down. But it's not our only means of measuring progress. You can use not only body weight measurements, but you can use skin calipers, you can assess the way your clothes fit over time, and most importantly, use your progress pictures. The visuals are what matter at the end of the day. If the scale weight doesn't change and you're looking better, awesome. I don't give a shit what the scale says at that point. Competitors who are really obsessed with the scale usually end up just becoming smaller versions of themselves and not actually seeing the changes in body composition that they want to see because they're chasing the scale so much they end up losing muscle mass along with the body fat. Prep isn't just about crushing a shit ton of cardio on the Stairmaster or seeing how much you can starve yourself. It's about putting your body in a position to lose body weight, but also fueling enough to maintain training performance and therefore muscle tissue. All right, point number 7. Take posing seriously. This is the one that I would go back and tell myself personally. During my first 2 preps, I did not practice posing nearly as much as I should have. But that's also because I didn't get into bodybuilding because I appreciated the posing and aesthetics of it all. I got into it because I love training and dieting and the lifestyle, and I wanted the show as a means of pushing myself that much further. I ended up falling in love with it all as I went through the process, but you could tell I was a massive rookie when it came to posing and I was on stage. You want to be able to present the physique that you worked hard for. You don't want to waste the months you just spent prepping to get ungodly shredded just to look like shit on stage with your posing, get docked for it, and not get rewarded for all the work that you actually put in. It doesn't matter how good you look. Judges will knock you if you don't look like you should be up there. If you're shaking, you're breathing heavy, you don't know your poses. If you don't know your poses, they will move you straight off to the side. Guaranteed. Moving on to my 8th takeaway: don't overcomplicate peak week. The best peak you can have is just getting peeled ahead of time. There's not a lot of magic to this, and people try and do way too much on peak week when it comes to water manipulation, sodium manipulation, switching up the foods from what they've been eating all prep, and honestly, it usually ends up ruining a physique rather than making it. The real magic of peak week is actually from doing less and not more. The entire goal is to actually de-stress from all the work that you've been putting your body through in all the months leading up to your show. Your body's holding on to a ton of accumulated fatigue and water retention, and it needs to de-stress in order to release all of that. So during this time, you should actually be bringing your training down, your activity down, and your food up, as long as you've gotten in shape ahead of time. And if you followed some of my previous takeaways, you'd be in shape beforehand, you wouldn't be rushing to the stage, trying to slap on finishing touches or whatever the hell in the gym the night before the show, when you should just be kicked up, relaxed, and just looking forward to it all. Use your peak week to make sure you have your posing down, your posing routine, make sure your travel's all in line, make sure everything is all in line so that the day before the show and the day of the show, you have as little to worry about as possible, other than purely enjoying the experience. And now on to the 9th takeaway. You've made it to show day. It was an awesome experience. It was everything you've ever dreamed of. It's all over, and now what? Have a post-show plan in place for as soon as you get off stage. You're coming off this major high, so many months of anticipation building up to this one day, and then after it's all over, it's very common to see competitors left with the post-show blues. They had no more structure or direction or a goal to work towards, so they're just left with this kind of empty feeling. One of the best ways to prevent this is by still having a structured training, diet, and lifestyle plan in place for after the show's over. This doesn't mean staying as militant as you were during prep, but it also prevents you from going totally off the rails and risking binge eating, just doing whatever you want, and before you know it, you put on 20 pounds in a week, and now you have to go into another cut after you were just cutting for 4 to 6 to 8 months. First off, it's extremely unhealthy to do that from a physical standpoint, but the psychological toll that takes is massive, and it can really deter people from getting back into bodybuilding in the first place. On the other hand, if you really enjoyed the process and you plan on still competing again after your first show, that means you're gonna have to go into an off season. So you wanna set yourself up to have a long and productive off season, that way you can make improvements based off your first show. But if you get too fat too quick post-show, this is gonna significantly shorten your off season because you're gonna have to go into a cut a lot sooner to get that excess body fat off, and therefore that's less time spent putting on new muscle and improving. Last point for this one, if you do truly get stage lean, and I mean peeled, you're going to experience some hormonal repercussions that take a lot of time after the show to recover from. So when you go into contest prep, you're not only dedicating all the months leading up to the show spent in prep, but you also need to dedicate time after the show to recovering properly and getting the body back to a healthy spot. All right, we are at the final takeaway. If you've even made it to this point, thank you for watching. I have no idea how long this is gonna be. I'm sure I've rambled a lot. I'm rambling a lot right now, but final takeaway, don't do it alone. You want to have somebody in your corner the entire way, whether it's a coach, a training partner, somebody who's been in your shoes before. The leaner you get, the easier it is to self-sabotage during prep. And this could go either way. You have the competitor that constantly overdoes it, overdoes the cardio, eats less food than it says on their meal plan, overdoes their training. And then you have the other competitor that's always trying to make things easier for themselves. They're always trying to sneak food into their diet, even if they don't realize that they're doing it. They're always doing a little bit less activity, maybe pulling back their training more than they probably should. You need to have a second set of eyes to keep yourself honest, and it also takes a big stress off of your shoulders. Having somebody else to make all the decisions and planning leaves it up to you to just do the thing. And especially, like I said before, if you're a normal civilian bodybuilder and you have a ton of other shit going on outside of your competition prep, that's one less thing for you to think of. The more you can autopilot, the more successful and on track you're going to stay during the process. And if you're thinking about prepping for your first bodybuilding show or want to do things differently the second time around, or even if you're not looking to compete in bodybuilding, you're somebody that just likes living the bodybuilding lifestyle and you're looking to make a little bit more progress, check out my coaching services linked in the description, fill out an application, we'll get in contact, see if we're a good fit. But if you've made it up to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching all the way through. I hope you got at least one thing out of it, and if you did, that makes my day. And I look forward to bringing you guys more informational content like this in the future. Thank you.